Well, welcome back to the live stream, everyone. Whether you're here for the live stream or watching on replay, my name's Jason. For anyone who hasn't been here before, my channel is primarily about ketogenic lifestyle, doing live streams like this, as well as product reviews and some short videos. So tonight, I don't want to waste any time here, but I've got a special guest that's going to come on the live stream with me tonight. I've been following this gentleman for quite a while on Instagram and his podcast. So I reached out to him and asked if he would come on here and tell his story of going keto and what it's done for him. So without further ado, let's bring in Gormy to the conversation here. Okay, so we're on with Gormy. It's good to see you here, Gormy. And again, thanks for doing this. It's I know you were more than willing to do this when I reached out to you. It's I know we haven't really met face to face, but we've talked on Instagram before. So yeah, again, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah. Let me just turn up my volume here. I can't really hear you too well. Okay, hello. There you go. Yep, no, I'm good. I had my headphones turned down a bit. Got one person in the chat so far. Robert, he's another creator. He's very supportive. So yeah, I just wanted to, like, the reason I had reached out to you is because you do have quite the story that I've heard a few times when you've been on other podcasts about your journey with weight loss and your whole basically your life, that led up to needing or making the choice to lose weight. And I wanted to bring you on here and give you a chance to tell my followers your story, and then we can go from there, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, sounds good to me. So if I were to start at the beginning, I guess, I grew up as an overweight kid, was put on diets very young. When I was 10 years old, I was over 200 pounds, and that kind of started the roller coaster for me. My weight would go up and down by many pounds at many points. And, I was over 300 pounds for most of high school, lost weight, went to college, graduated, and my weight just kept going up. My heaviest weight ever was 540 pounds, and I was over 500 pounds for close to, at least the better part of a decade, and had a lot of different life things happen during that time. I had built kind of a career in higher education and decided to kind of step out of that. And when that didn't really work, and realized that it's kind of hard to do well in job interviews when you were in the shape that I was in, 540 pounds, barely able to stand for a few minutes. So basically walking into a job interview was like I just run a marathon in terms of, what I look like. And decided to lose weight because really with that purpose of finding work, of getting back into work, and discovered the paleo diet was what I did first, and did that kind of hardcore for a couple of years. Went from 540 to 210 pounds. I was 540 in like 2010, and by 2013 I was 210 pounds, and I didn't stay there for long. It was my 40th birthday that year in 2013, and I got to 210 pounds for my birthday, which was my goal. May of 2013 I was 210, and by mid-October of 2013 I was 480 pounds. So I put on 270 pounds very fast, and basically it went through that process that I think a lot of people go through, where it's like you try, doesn't work. You don't really put your whole heart into it. I like to say I did no work on the mindset side of things, no work to prepare myself what life would be like losing that amount of weight, and quickly backtracked from it and went back to living that life where I just figured eventually my eating and my weight would lead to my demise, and thought that's what was going to happen. And of course, then life throws you a curveball. The universe throws us all, curveballs all the time. Had some situations happen in my family where for the first time I realized that I didn't just need to live, but I actually wanted to. Like, I felt a desire inside of me for the first time to say, okay, I'm ready to fight for this. And so I realized what I had done wrong that first time around. I had done no work on the mental side of things. So I knew I needed to kind of keep that in focus, and I needed to use tools that would help me. Throughout being paleo, I was pretty paleo low carb, and the keto word had just started to come out then, more people talking about it, hearing it show up in places, seeing it show up on social media. I often like to say, like, especially when you're someone who's significantly overweight, you tend to stay on top of diet culture, like what the current trends are, what people are doing. So I kind of had an idea of what keto looked like, bought a couple of books, and actually I bought those books in late, 2016, and I didn't read them until 2017, the beginning of 2017, when I made the decision I was going to try again. And in a weekend, I read 2 books and cleaned out my house and decided on that Monday I was going keto. And that's kind of where that journey started for me. That was February of 2017. And I started out in that place that a lot of people call dirty keto. I was just kind of paying attention to carbs, not paying attention to fat and protein, and lost a lot of weight really quickly. Went through some medical issues during that time as well that cemented for me that desire to live, that I knew I was doing the right thing. Medical issues that I wouldn't have survived if I hadn't started to lose weight, and continued that journey along, doing the work. Started to stall. I realized, which, some people might not agree with this in the keto space, but you can overeat on keto pretty easily. Especially if you're someone like myself that has food issues and food addiction issues. And I was starting to put weight on eating 25 grams of carbs a day and protein and fat to satiation. And that satiation point for me kept going up, and decided that I needed to work with someone, hired a coach, because I knew I was going to have to start tracking. I was going to have to get into macros and all that stuff that people talk about in the keto space. And I was just confused by it all. I was really confused, like how to set it up, how to even get into tracking it. I'm kind of old school in a lot of ways. Here I am on live on the interwebs with you. But even when I first was starting to think about tracking, I'm like, I need a notebook. I need a notebook to write everything down in. Now, I started working with a coach, and he's like, well, let's get, what app do you want to use to track? And I'm like, well, I'll use a notebook. And he's like, no, that's not going to do it. But I started working with someone and learned more about actually doing a properly formulated ketogenic diet, actually upping that fat percentage, and realizing that eating the higher fat percentage actually started to give me some relief from cravings and hunger and things along those lines, and learning more about what it means, to up your protein or up your fat, and look at total carbs versus net carbs, and enter this whole world that I didn't even know existed in the keto space. Like, I was very much on one side of the fence, I guess, when it comes to keto, and discovered there's a whole nother world out there. And I went from 480 pounds down to the low 200s, and stayed there for a little bit, and was realizing it was taking a lot of work for me to stay in the very low 200s, like having to track every bite of food. So kind of found a more comfortable spot for me in my body and my life, and focused more on how I physically moved and how my numbers respond and all of those things, and have just kind of moved forward living in that keto space. I've now been keto almost 5 years, which is hard to imagine when I started. And often people talk about whether it's keto sustainable or not. And for me, it's almost become second nature. And I eventually was able to take that experience that I had going through this roller coaster journey of gaining and losing weight and living that life and turn it into something that I could use to help other people. So I started working with my coach, coaching other people, working one-on-one with people, doing group coaching, working on mindset and keto and macros and all of that fun stuff and helping people. And I've been doing that now over a year and have worked with over 24 people, helped them see some really great success, been able to kind of turn this decades of experience of my life into something that I can use as a tool to help other people. So it's been a bit of a wild ride, but I'm excited to still be here and still be alive and still in the game and still going.
Yeah. No, that, you say I've heard your story before, but it always, it does hit home. Like I've not come anywhere near to the roller coaster you've had, but I do agree with a lot of the parts about if you're not prepared for what to do once you meet that goal. That's, I think, the trap that a lot of people fall into. A lot of people don't have the mindset that they need for when they actually reach their supposed goal, that they don't know what to do. And then it just goes haywire and things just go out of whack again.
Well, like me, a lot of people saw weight loss as a journey with a finish line, that there was eventually going to be a place where you just kind of cross over and you leave that space and you don't have to think about it anymore. And you don't have to actually be conscious and mindful. And, I realized that that's the biggest falsehood. It's not about doing something until you get to a certain place. It's about building this mindful life about how food impacts you and how what are the actual things that matter as much as the scale. Because you see a lot of people a lot of times, like especially in the social media space, say, throw your scale away, the scale doesn't matter. And I'm like, I will say, when you're 500 pounds, the scale matters. Seeing the scale move matters. Like, it is a big metric to know that what you're actually doing is working. But there are other things that come into play, like your actual health and your all of those fun tests that a doctor can run, and how are you physically moving. And I'm someone that, like, because of I was significantly overweight so young, I stopped seeing doctors when I was a teenager because I knew what they were going to tell me. And I was not stupid. I knew in my 30s and early 40s that because of the fact, that I was waking up several times a night to go to the bathroom and constantly thirsty and sweating when I was eating, that I more than likely was full-blown type 2 diabetic. I had neuropathy in my feet. And if I ate low carb, all of those symptoms would go away eventually. And so I would kind of self-treat, but could never really kind of deal with what was actually going on for me in terms of how I was approaching in my relationship with food. So I wasn't really doing anything about it. And like I said, in 2017, I was hospitalized with pneumonia. I was in the hospital for 21 days. I almost died. I was told that if I waited another hour or two, I wouldn't have survived when I went to the emergency room. And then I was told that if I had lost about 150 pounds at that point, or a little over around 125 pounds, that if I hadn't lost that weight and got my body to where it was at that point, I wouldn't have survived. So I then started to understand what it means, when a doctor gives you test results, because I started working with a cardiologist and a pulmonologist. And I discovered that I had a heart attack at some point in my past and just never knew about it, and luckily survived. And like I said, that helped for me to really cement that I was doing something good, with what I was doing. How I was eating was actually changing. There's a power to food. There's a medicinal aspect to how we eat and what we do with food. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. Keto isn't just about weight loss. Keto is about, your overall health. Like, it's about allowing your body to do the things that your body is meant to do, and not just kind of keep you trapped in one place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, it is, and that's what I had to realize eventually as well, is that it does turn into that, like you say, it's just like second nature. It's just the way you live. And and I resonate with the other thing you said earlier, is that when you were trying to stay in the low 200s with your weight, and then it turns into more of it turns into not being fun, I guess. That's the way I looked at it. Like, I tried to stay around 200 pounds. I got down from 278 to actually just under 200 pounds, but trying to stay there just I didn't really enjoy life doing that. So it's, I've leveled out a bit heavier, but everything that I was dealing with health wise definitely got better just by, like you say, just by choosing to eat the right kinds of foods. So we've got a few people here. Tony's here. He was on a couple of weeks ago. He had a great conversation with us. Robert saying, love when Gormy said in the beginning he had prepared for a new life with significant weight loss. Yeah, people don't understand the drastic change that comes with it. It's, like I say, my change wasn't hugely drastic, but I can understand, I can imagine what you go through, being at that weight and then getting, like, that's a different life altogether. Like it from, like, I didn't have any of the struggles of being way overweight that I know that comes with that. So I guess I didn't experience that, but it's, it does drastically change your life completely.
Well, it's when you're that big, because no body is intended to be sustainably that large. You build an existence that supports it. You build your identity around it. Like, I was the big guy. I was the big guy that ate a lot. Like, that was who I was in my friend groups and all of those things. And so when you've built that to be so central to your identity, and then you take that part away, you have to really examine what's left. You have to examine what is important to you. The most important thing in my life to me used to be my next meal. And I had to try to figure out, what actually did I care about? What are all these things that I missed out on that I just couldn't do? What are these experiences that I want to have? Like, there's a lot, like I said, like a lot of that mental work is so important, that mindfulness, like, especially, anyone who's going on a weight loss journey. Like, I think having a clear vision of why you're on it is important, and building action around that why and allowing that why to evolve. Initially my why was just to survive. My why was to live. And eventually you hit a point where you're going to live, your health is better. You're going to live. So what's your purpose? Why are you still living this life? Why are you still here? I think every human being can benefit from having that discussion with themselves, but especially if you're trying to change your health and you're trying to lose weight or get into different shape, kind of get into a different shape. Like, it takes having that kind of focus to help you through those moments that are challenging and are hard, because that it's another one of the kind of fallacies that when people come to talk to me about keto, they're like, I've heard that if I go keto, I'll never be hungry again. And that's what I want, to never be hungry again. And I'm like, well, that's not really true. Like, you're going to be hungry, but you're learning about the difference between being physically hungry and emotional hunger, and able to identify, is it something that I can plan for strategy wise, or is it something that, my body just needs more food today, so I'm going to give my body some more healthy food and see how it responds. Like, there's that kind of cliche, like, if you're truly hungry, boiled unseasoned chicken breast sounds appealing, and if boiled unseasoned chicken breast sounds appealing, then maybe you really are hungry. Have some eggs, do something along those lines. But if thinking about boiled unseasoned chicken breast doesn't do it, but thinking about pizza or Pop-Tarts or something along those lines does, well, then maybe there's something else at play that you need to think about.
Oh yeah, for sure. It does completely change the way you think about food, and I'm not sure what your thoughts on or what your practice is as far as fasting goes, but it makes it easier. I have found, and I've said this on other live streams, that being properly having the proper nutrition when you're eating makes it a lot easier to not eat if you can't, like we've all been in that position where, we're busy with work or we're doing something, and that's where I find the difference is that I no longer do I think, oh man, I really got to eat something. Like, I'm so hungry, I'm getting that hanger going kind of thing. that just doesn't really happen anymore, right? Like it's, you know, it allows you to get through those those times without focusing so much of your time on food.
And I think when it comes to fasting, like, I think fasting is easier when you're someone who's following a low carb ketogenic diet, because being fat adapted and using fat as your fuel source, it's more of a longer burning energy. You know, I love the analogy of, you know, if you're building a fire pit in your backyard and you just keep throwing kindling and tiny sticks into it, you have to keep throwing more to keep it going. If you throw big logs onto that fire, they burn longer, they burn hotter. And it's that when you're using sugar for energy or you're using fat for energy. And if you're using fat for energy, you're able to go longer periods. You're able to extend that. And as far as my philosophy on fasting, it's been something that I've used a lot myself. I think now when I talk to people about fasting, I get them to really think about the benefits of fasting and whether it's right for them or not. Like, if someone is having to white knuckle through to fast, I think some of the detriments that happen, the stress that you're putting your body under at that point, might be worse than the actual benefit of the fasting. So I think it's a very individual thing. I think there's been a lot of research lately that talks about the not so great impact on women when it comes to fasting in terms of like affecting their hormonal cycles. So it should be a very individual thing, but it is something that for me, you know, especially when my calories were lower and, you know, I wasn't in a maintenance place, I just naturally started doing OMAD, like the 1 meal a day. And it was never a philosophy. Whenever I would post about it, you'd get all these questions, you know, why are you doing OMAD? Like, how do you feel about OMAD? And I'm like, I'm not doing OMAD like because I'm championing OMAD. I'm doing OMAD because I'm eating 17 to 1800 calories a day. And I personally prefer having a larger meal, probably with a fatty coffee, than I do having 3 smaller meals or 2 smaller meals throughout the day. Like, I think it, again, can go back to being a very personal thing, but I think there's some power to fasting. Like, especially, you know, I've done some extended fasting. I've done 24, 48. I did a 7-day once. I don't really recommend a 7-day to people. Not for any health reasons, but just for the psychology of it. That last 24 hours of a 7-day fast is brutal. Like, when you're 3 days in, 4 days in, you know, life is fine. You know, there's a couple more days of fasting coming. You're not even hungry anymore. Your body starts to downregulate ghrelin. And so you're not really getting those hunger spurts. But for me, psychologically, that last 24 hours when I knew food was coming soon was almost like, that was when it started to really ramp up for me and drive me a little nutso. But, you know, I see people get benefits from it all the time. And I just think all of these tools are things that are very bio-individual. You know, keto is a very individual thing. If a person comes to me and says, I can never do keto, my response is usually, well, then you'll never do keto. You know, if you think you can't do it, you're never going to be able to do it. You know, if you're open to it, let's talk about it. But if you're 100%, you know, you're 100% in that place of, I can't live without bread. Well, until you believe there's a possibility you could live without bread, you're not going to live without bread. So you kind of have to have your head in the right place.
Yeah, exactly. And I've run into the same thing, is that anytime the conversation turns to keto, if someone says that exact thing, say, oh, well, I can't live without pasta or bread or my, you know, my chocolate bars or my whatever, any of it. As soon as the conversation goes there, then I just back away from it, because you're right. There's no point in even talking to, or well, I guess there's always a point, and there's always you know, you always want to try and help people, but until someone gets it in their mindset, like you say, that if you give this up, you can get rid of these conditions, because there's always conditions that people have that they'd rather not have, you know, the heartburn, the migraines, anything else. Like it doesn't have to be severe conditions like diabetes or hypertension or anything. It's even the small chronic things that people complain about, most of them can be easily alleviated just by changing your diet. But you know, I personally think it has to come from more a mindset than just looking at it as a diet kind of thing to lose weight. If you can't think about why you want to do it, like you've said, then unfortunately I don't see it ever working for you.
That's it. And I think one of the things that people say a lot is that keto is restrictive. And I say, yes, it is about, in a lot of ways, about restriction. But for me, I see keto as freedom through restriction. I see it as something that has given me so many benefits just because I chose that restriction. So I weigh it out in the big picture of my life. So maybe I don't do X, Y, and Z. I don't eat X, Y, and Z. Excuse me. But by doing that, I feel relief from intense cravings. I feel relief from that hunger that used to dominate my life. I have mobility. I'm going to live longer. I mean, I could walk on in front of a bus tomorrow, but I have the potential to live longer. And so I see those benefits outweigh the other piece. It's like when someone says, like, so you're never going to have cake again. And this is you've probably heard me use this example before because I say it all the time, but it's not that I'm never going to eat cake again. It's that I know that if I did never eat cake again, I could live a very happy, thrive in life. I could have an amazing life if I didn't. It's really about realizing that in some ways, I think tying yourself to foods, I can't live with that whole I can't live without thing is more restrictive because you're putting barriers to things that could be really awesome for yourself, all because you think you can't live without something until you might be able to prove to yourself that you live even better without it.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree. It's, and I've adopted the whenever I get anyone that says, oh, well, you can't eat that, or it's basically, I just have to remind them it's that not that I can't eat it. I can eat whatever I want. I can, I'm a grown person. I can do whatever I want. I can eat whatever I want. I choose not to because I know how I'll feel if I do. Like it's a choice. But the one thing I've seen lately that's kind of, it kind of worries me about the world is that, having been in this keto space for almost 3 years now, the way that the world is labeling eating healthy or eating what we should be eating as a diet, when eating garbage processed crap is the norm and the way that, that's the normal way of eating. Whereas eating healthy fats and meats and vegetables and, your controlled number of unprocessed carbs, that's labeled a diet. Like it just worries me that, I know that we're trying on Instagram and everywhere else to try and change the mindset of the masses, but I just don't, unfortunately. I'm not sure it's a battle that we're ever going to win.
Well, it literally is the meme come to life of like, when I ate, McDonald's pizza and Taco Bell for one meal, no one blinked, no one batted an eye. But because I had, a burger with a salad with no croutons, a bunless burger with no with a salad with no croutons for dinner, all of a sudden I'm doing something radical. Like, I had family members like that. Like my stepmother specifically, like when she would start to see how I would order food when I went keto and we'd go out to eat and, I'd order a burger without a bun, let's be honest, like 9 times until restaurants started to kind of come around more to the idea of keto, the bunless burger was your best friend, like a steak or a bunless burger, chicken breast, something along those lines. And so I was always getting a bunless burger and having them put it on top of the side salad. And, there's this, that's all you're going to eat. That's all you're going to have. And I'm like, I'm fine. I don't need to have anything else. Like I look at it as like, to go back to the cake, like not to keep bringing this back to cake, but go back to cake. I've had more than enough cake in my lifetime for 10 significantly overweight people. So if I don't have cake again, I'll be fine. I know what cake tastes like. I talk to clients about that all the time. Like when they say, well, I'm making cookies with my children this weekend, so I want to make sure that I taste test the cookies. And I'm like, have you never had a cookie before? And she's like, no, I've had these cookies before. And I'm like, then why do you have to taste them? Like, what does that mean? Like, do you think you're going to poison your children with the cookies? Like, let's be honest about where that's coming from. Like, it's that whole idea. I know what these things taste like. I know what a Reese's peanut butter cup tastes like. Believe me, I can intimately describe for you the ridges on a Reese's peanut butter cup. Like I could probably sketch one in the dark. Like I don't I don't necessarily need that anymore. Like, it doesn't mean that, like you said, we can choose to do all kinds of things, but it's this idea of finding what actually promotes our health, like what actually allows our bodies to function. You know, I think a lot of times people look at keto and they immediately, because their diet is so filled with processed foods, that they look right to the processed foods for keto. Like that must be what you're eating all the time. You're eating these, you've gone from one hyper processed food to another. And it's like, well, no, if you look at it, majority of what a person following a ketogenic diet eating is, like you said, meats, healthy fats, and vegetables. Like, what is the problem? Like, on what planet is it somehow not okay? Like, it's like, okay, and I get it. I get where people are coming from. And I think often it's because people are threatened, by, are you telling me I should change? And it's like, well, no. I'm like, if you had told me to change before, I probably would have pushed you out of my life. Like, I'm not telling you what you need to do, but I'm going to let you know what I'm doing for me. And I'm not going to compromise what I'm doing for me just to make you feel better. I'm not going to I'm not going to have the bun on my burger or, load up on mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving just because that somehow calms another person down. If they're placing value on what I'm eating is affecting their emotional state, that's something for them to work on. Like I can only control myself and how I react to what other people do. I can't do something to make another person happy. Like it happens a lot, when you talk to people and they're like, well, my great aunt Zelda is going to be bringing her pecan pie to Thanksgiving dinner. So I have to, if I don't have a piece of that pie, it's going to ruin her day. And I'm like, do you honestly think that that's going to ruin her day? Like, has she said this to you? Like, I had one of my very, very first clients, and she loves when I tell this story, 3 days into working with me, 3 days into a ketogenic diet, said, I've got a challenging event coming up this weekend. I said, okay, what is it? And she's like, my 4-year-old nephew's birthday party is Saturday. I'm like, okay, so what's the challenge? And she's like, well, he's going to have cake and he's going to want me to eat the cake. And I said, do you honestly think that your 4-year-old nephew is going to place value on his birthday party on whether or not his aunt has a piece of the store-bought supermarket cake that your sister's bringing to the party? Like, do you honestly believe that? Like, or is that what you're making up in your head to give yourself the excuse to be able to eat the cake? Like, there's no, a 4-year-old is not going to get tears in his eyes and say, Auntie, if you don't have cake, my birthday won't exist. Like, that's not really what's happening in the world. And if a 4-year-old says that to you, they're going to forget it by the next year. Like, it's not going to affect them 10 minutes later. Like, realistically, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. But like, one of the people in your comments, Wayside Wade, we all love our excuses and justifications. Like, we're good at making excuses. I had a guest on my podcast, this week who said, he's the king of excuses. And I'm like, we all are great at coming up with excuses to justify behavior. I have to, with Thanksgiving, I have to eat, it's this, I have to do that. Like, a lot of people talk about, this, especially, I mean, I know, some of your listeners are probably not here in the States where I am, but in the States, you got Thanksgiving to Christmas is the holiday season. And for some reason, it's seen as like a 60-day buffet. But if it really was just about Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner, we wouldn't have all the problems that we have. It's the fact that we turn it into buffet season. Like, you could, it's perspective. It's perspective and excuses. And, I was great at making, I could, like I said, like when I was at my heaviest, like I would have wounds on my legs that would weep fluid. And I would, to me, okay, this is fine. Like I felt like I lived my life as the meme of the dog sitting in the burning house at the kitchen table saying, this is fine. This is okay. I can't stand for more than 5 minutes without severe back pain and being out of breath, but this is fine, because I got to have my Wendy's and a pizza tonight and donuts at 2:00 in the morning and all of those things.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's, I remember when I used to, try other diets before I started keto, and I was eating carbs all day and going to the gym and everything, and that was the worst time for making excuses. Like, oh well, I worked out and I did this, and and you work at it for 5 or 6 days, and then you're like, oh well, time to have a treat. That's why in the last 3 years I haven't done any cheat days, because I know, and because for me, cheating is just a slippery slope that's going to turn in, one meal is going to turn into one day, and one day is going to turn into a weekend, and then it's going to be a week. So for me, it's all or nothing. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you have to just stick with it and just remember, why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, when I started keto, yes, I wanted to lose some weight, but what really pushed me to it was when my grandson was born in 2017. By January 2019, he was big enough that, he was running around. He always wants to play. And, it's so, but I couldn't keep up with him. My back was always sore and sore knees and everything else. So it was then when I decided, okay, well, if I'm going to be able to play with him and grow up with him, being able to play with him as long as he wants to, I got to make a change. So that's why I started. And so that's been my tunnel vision, my focus of why I stick to it and don't cheat, because I know I don't want to lose that time with him. So but you're right. We all come back to this mindset thing. I've seen it, you've seen it on Instagram all the time. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are, 100% in for 6 months and then they disappear for 6 months. They come back, they're 100%. It's like, it's still a yo-yo diet. And again, I think it comes down to them being able to realize that, okay, well, if you didn't stop these 4 times, you'd be where you want to be, or where you wanted to be when you finished, right? So.
Which is hard because, people go through that place, and like you talking about cheat days, like I try to eliminate the word cheat from people's vocabularies. Like all food is a choice, whether cheating gets us nowhere in life. So why on some level, why do we think, I know The Rock loves to post about his epic cheat days, but let's be honest, we're all not The Rock. We're not, we're not in his body with his metabolism, his musculature, the other things that he might have flowing through his blood. But it's this idea that, you have to see things as a choice, and when you see it as a choice, it gets harder to step away from, because it's easy to kind of be in that place of, oh, well, I fell off track. Because falling off track sounds like an accident. It's never an accident. No one ever, you don't fall over, you don't trip, fall, and end up with a Snickers bar in your mouth. You don't trip and fall into a McDonald's and all of a sudden a hamburger falls off the counter. Like, that's not how this works. Like, it is about, and that doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's easy to have that perspective on choice. But when you empower yourself to make those choices, it means you have to face the consequences. You have to admit that it was you that made the choice to step off. You made that decision. And so, but I also think it's easier to get back on for people that are out there. Like when I talk to people about, especially again, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, all of these things, like, I want to have X, Y, and Z on this day. And it's like, well, if you go into that knowing the consequences, potentially, and you still can make that choice and feel good about it, and you're not going to freak out if the scale jumps for a couple of days or anything along those lines, you feel more empowered to be at the place that you need to be. You feel better about being able to do that. Whereas it's that whole falling off allows you to say, well, I fell off, I screwed up, I did wrong, I'm a bad person. If I'm a bad person, I deserve more punishment. And then it leads into those cycles of, well, if I screwed up on Thursday, I might as well, the week's almost over. So that means why not go crazy Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'll start again on Monday. Like it goes back to that place of excuses and justification. And, instead, if you're in a conscious place and you decide, you even do, make some food choices you're not happy with on a day, when you wake up the next day, if you see that next day is like, I'm back on track, I have control of my choices. I have control of the next choice. And, that means sometimes taking it day by day. Sometimes that means taking it hour by hour. Like, you make a bad choice, make the next one good. Like, the most important choice you're ever going to make is the next one. So if you have gone to a place, I get asked that question a lot, like, how do I get back on track? And there's no magic formula. Like, what you should be doing, how you should be eating, what your plan is, just start doing it. The only thing holding you back from just doing it is yourself. Like, you're choosing not to be back on track. Like, just start doing it again. That's also why I'm not a fan of like reactionary fasting. I think you see that a lot, especially on Instagram. Oh, I had a big cheat weekend, so now I'm gonna fast for 72 hours. Like, when you're following up food behavior with punishment, like, that's just not. that's not a healthy mental process. Like the best way to react to having a cheat or a treat or anything along those lines is do what you're supposed to be doing the next day. Go right back to your plan. Let things even out as they do. But we know that fueling our bodies properly is what we need and gives us the energy we need. And so especially if you're a keto person that's loaded your body with carbs, you're going to feel like garbage. And by getting back into eating the fat and protein that your body needs, you're going to feel better even faster. Like you're going to get yourself back to the place that you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna bring up the same thing about this reactionary fasting. It drives me crazy when I see people, oh, well, yeah, I had my birthday and I ate all the cake and the cupcakes and the cookies and everything else. So now I'm just going to fast for 2 days. I'm like, I don't ever say anything about it because I don't like to confront people about their choices on Instagram. It's not really my place to say anything, but it does scare me when I see that and it scares me when I see people trying to put themselves out there as influencers and coaches that say these things, because they don't realize that that's no better than, like, it is an eating disorder.
Oh yeah, it's 100% disordered eating.
Like if you're going to punish yourself for what you did yesterday by not eating, like that's there's nothing psychologically healthy about that whatsoever. So on that note, just shifting gears here a bit, you've got a podcast.
I do.
You're coming up you're coming up on 150 episodes on that podcast. So it's been going a while. I've listened to a lot of the stories on there. I don't know if you wanted to tell everyone sort of what that's all about.
So my podcast is not video format because I have a face for radio. But it's called the Fat Guy Forum. When I created it, I realized that in the health and fitness space, when it came to podcasts, there were a lot of podcasts that were targeted at athletes and a lot of podcasts that were addressing issues for women. And I think that's incredible, and I think it's needed. And I realized there wasn't a space to tell the stories of men that struggle with weight issues and the mental side of it and the experiences. And so I created the Fat Guy Forum, where I tell the stories. I bring men on to share their stories, and we talk about those issues and what it's like. And interestingly, majority of the audience is women. A lot of them just because they relate and they love hearing men open up and be vulnerable and kind of share these things that we don't normally talk about. But also because they're trying to support husbands and boyfriends and partners and brothers and fathers and all of those things. And it's a space where it's very conversational, like we're having here. I start off with the same question all the time. I ask them, what qualifies them to be on the Fat Guy Forum, and that's their cue to just kind of get into telling their story. And we talk about where this journey has taken them. And the show isn't just about weight loss success. It's not primarily focused on people that are at the quote unquote end of their journeys. Like it's about people that are just getting started, people that are in the middle of it, people that aren't even, I'm always open to talk to guys that aren't even trying to lose weight. Like I think there's a lot of different experiences and perspectives that just help people put together things. Like some of the early episodes were just me alone, talking about my story. I did one that I called My 540-Pound Life, where I tried to give a real look at what it's like to live in a 540-pound body. I talked about what it was like to try to clean myself after I went to the bathroom and the adaptations I had to make and things along those lines, and hygiene. And you'd be amazed at the number of DMs that I got from people who were like, I do the same thing. I struggle with the same thing. Like I didn't think anyone else was going through that. And so that's really the purpose of it, is to allow people, and it's not all men that have lost as much weight as I have or more. I've had guys on that have been 700 or 800 pounds and have lost weight. I've had guys on that have lost 40 pounds, and made a change in their life, because I think there's all different perspectives, and that's what it takes to help people realize that there's something that'll resonate with someone out there. And, like I said, I've had guys on that are doing transformation bodybuilding shows. I had a gentleman on recently, Justin, who was on My 600-Pound Life. And so we got a little behind the scenes look at what it's like to actually film that show, which was fascinating to me, as someone that's watched many episodes of it, like to hear, what that setup is like. There's just a lot of, and it's allowed me to connect with people that I saw, as inspiring me, and that's really where a lot of it comes from. I reach out to guys all the time and say, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast. And their response is always, well, my story is not that interesting. I'm not that interesting. And I'm like, every person has a story that matters. And I think that's another theme of the show, is that no matter where you've come from or what you've gone through, there's some validity to what you've experienced, and just being willing to share that with other people. And, I have had people on that are keto. I've had carnivores on. I've had a ton of people on that have had all the different weight loss surgeries. I've had Weight Watchers ambassadors on. I've had people that just did strict calorie counting. And it's amazing to me, because a lot of times these are people that have done diets that I've tried and failed at miserably. And to hear someone thrive and really get out of what their experience is just always inspiring to me, and, makes me want to keep doing it. And it's been a little over 2 years since the podcast premiered. Like you said, we're coming up on episode 150. I've got I just crossed over 200,000 downloads. I'm just like, the reach has been inspired, inspiring. I keep saying that word. But it's just inspiring to me to know that there are people that are listening all the time and getting something out of it, and really just finding some place to connect and finding somewhere where they feel heard. And I get DMs like that on Instagram a lot, or I've even get emails to the show where someone's like, I appreciate your willingness to create this space and curate this space. So to me, it's become something that I think is really unique, and I'm just excited to continue to see it to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I can say for 100% that I'm sure that it has, a lot of your episodes have reached like hundreds or thousands of people that are sort of, trying to figure out what they need to do, because like you say, it's not a keto podcast. It's not you're right. You have all sorts of different mechanisms and tools that these men are using. And I think that's the best part about it, is it gives a really broad picture of how you can make those changes in your life. And again, it doesn't really matter how you do it. It just comes down to making that decision that you need to make that change in your life and doing whatever it is. Because I know I've listened to a lot of your guests that have had surgery, and even with surgery, that if you're not 100% committed to it and you're not ready for what's next, the surgery is not going to do what it needs to do. If you can't change your mindset, the surgery is not going to help. So I know it's definitely, I've gained a lot listening to the episodes on there, and it's some of the stories are just incredible that are on that podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, hearing that a lot. And one of the things that I love about it is, because I think there's stereotypes out there when you see an overweight person, and everyone has an idea of what that person's life is like and what their behavior is like and how they got there and all of that. And to me, the most fascinating thing I've seen on the podcast is there are so many different ways that people get fat. There's so many different, the twists and turns of our lives and our journeys. I've spoken to people that grew up as, like myself, as overweight children and became overweight adults. I had a guest on last week or the week before, and he was significantly fit. He was a high school athlete. He was fit through college. He was in his 20s, and through depression ended up turning to food, and then ended up over 500 pounds, in a span of 10 years. It's amazing to me to see, how we adapt to the world and what everyone's, a lot of my guests, I had a guest on, Anthony Lawley, who was a multimillionaire and incredibly successful in his personal life and in business, but weight was just the issue that he could not find success with until he eventually did. And it's, there's so much to people besides just what you see on the surface. And so I love being able to dive into and see kind of what brought a person to where they were at, and how they think that developed, and what was their past like, and what do they see coming for themselves in the future. It's always one of my favorite questions to ask people, is what comes next? Where are you going now?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people I find a lot of people don't really even think about that until you actually ask them, because they don't know. Like they think day to day, hour to hour, but they don't think, okay, well, where am I going to be in a year or 2 years or down the road, and it can definitely help to have that forward thinking mentality.
For sure.
So I know you're on a bit of a time restriction here tonight, so I won't keep you too much longer. You have mentioned that you're doing coaching now. If you want to just give us a quick sort of rundown of what that's about.
So I work with a company called Keto Road LLC. We're a holistic nutrition ketogenic coaching service. I write blogs on our website, theketoroad.com, that are about mindset topics and then also about keto topics. And then I work with people as a one-on-one coach. I work with clients that are using the ketogenic diet. I also work on accountability and mindset coaching for people that might not even be working on losing weight, but they're looking to build that daily accountability into their life, or they have a weight loss plan in place, or there's someone that knows what they need to be doing, but they just need help to be on track. So, I've got some clients where it's strictly nutrition work, and some clients we talk every week about goals and redefining goals and, how are things going every day and, all of that. And like I said, it's a challenging time because we're heading into that holiday season, but it's good to see people working through what they think are the choices they need to make. And it's great to see people grow. I've got one client that I've been working with for over a year, and that's amazing. And like I said, I've seen people have some incredible successes, and it's sad and joyful when someone moves on from working with me, but I've had a lot of people kind of get to that place of success and help them work on maintenance and, kind of move into what they need to do for the next phase of their journey. And so I'm always looking to work with new people and, create some new different things. We've created a kind of a do-it-yourself keto program we call Build Your Keto Road, where it's a PDF and it helps you set up your macros and set your goals. And we've got some exciting things coming out soon about that, where we're going to be creating a private Facebook community where people can kind of come together and receive some help and some support. And there's a lot of exciting things on the horizon.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely put some links to that and the podcast down in the description here, so people can check that out. So I guess any other words of wisdom that you have for people, or we've pretty much covered everything?
I would just say, like, the thing that I say this a lot in my podcast is, if you're someone out there who is thinking about making a change, just get started. Don't wait for things to be perfect. You're never going to have all the answers. It's this. I really feel like going on a health journey is about learning as you go. It's about picking something, trying it, give it some time. Don't do something for a few days and then say it didn't work. Give something 30 days, give it 60 days, and then determine if you need to make changes. But it's that being willing to make changes. Because for me, it was always, when I tried diets, it was always, I would do it for X amount of time and then just say, oh, this isn't working. And I just give up and go back to my old behavior. And when I hit that point that how I was doing keto wasn't working, I realized that I still needed to keep fighting, and I needed to kind of find what I needed to do next. And I did that because I knew that my why was important. I had that mindset. I did that work. So be willing to dig into your head and start to think about kind of like where behavior is coming from and what's driving it. And don't be afraid to ask yourself those hard questions. And, it's always about moving forward. So like I said, get started and talk to, your show is a great spot, your channel, your Instagram, my Instagram, like I'm on Instagram. Did I say that 7 times now? But, reach out to people. I think the Instagram community is really great. I think some of the Facebook community is not that exciting because that's where people tend to go to snark at each other. But I think there's some amazing support systems on Instagram. Check out my podcast and find some of the guys to follow on there. They're always willing to talk. Like, they're not all coaches or influencers or anything at all. It's just normal people going through this who want to, use their experiences to help others. So I hope some people will check it out.
For sure. Well, that's awesome advice. I definitely agree. It's just start now and just change things up as you need to. So cool. Okay. Well, this has been awesome, Gormy. I want to thank you very much for coming on here and telling your story and giving your insight on keto and weight loss and mindset. So again, I'll put all your links down in the description, and we'll go from there.
Awesome.
So I'll be seeing you back on Instagram.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me on. And thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
that watched. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And yes, Wayside Wade said we it seems like we both want them to visit us on Instagram, but yeah, visit us on Instagram. Yeah. Stop on by.
Yeah.
Stop on by.
Okay.
I'll have a warm mug of something for you. I don't know.
Something.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks everybody.
Gormy. Yeah. Bye now. Okay. Well, thanks for being here. I guess I didn't mean to ignore the chat here. I guess we've got some new faces in here. Rusticated Art. I saw that you came to the channel today, so thanks for checking out the live stream. You got Wade here as usual. Thanks for stopping by. Robert's still here. It's yeah, I was really looking forward to talking to Gormy. He's got some really good insight into not only weight loss, but it's the mindset part that he's been able to sort of put forth in his Instagram and in his podcast and everything else. And I would suggest, if you ever, if you've got some time to kill in the car, just look up his podcast. It's the Fat Guy Forum, and some of the stories on there, they're like Gormy's story is pretty incredible, but there's a lot of other stories out there that are just mind blowing. Yeah, thanks for the. I always say that the better the guest, the better the live stream. Gormy's definitely good at being interviewed. He does great interviews as well. So yeah, so I don't know if anyone else has any questions or comments about about what we talked about tonight. We're coming up on an hour here, so I'll probably wrap things up. Not sure if we'll have a guest next week on Monday night, but I will definitely do something for a live stream next Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Might need to get some Seinfeld going in the future too. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we'll do another come stream with me next week. We're gonna have to put some rules in place for the next one. It's just keep in mind who's watching in the live streams, and make sure we make them PG, which most of us are pretty good at. But like I say, we will set something up for next Monday. I think you can behave for the most part. If anyone's watching and they want to, they've never live streamed and they want to come on and be a guest, as Gormy was tonight, just to hang out and talk about your channels or just whatever's going on in your life kind of thing. We'll probably do that next Monday, and I'll set up a guest for the Monday after that. So I guess for now we got someone who can't behave here. Well, yeah, but half the time your microphone's turned off, so I don't have to worry about you, Robert, because it's the audio that can get me in trouble. Can I come on next week? Yep, for sure, Robert. It's always like speaking with you. It's like I say, we'll just do a hangout next week and see where it goes. I don't know where you bigger concern. Where are you hanging out now, or right now, Wade? Are you going to be around next Monday if we have a live stream, or are you going to be traveling, or? You'll have to. I know, Robert, you were saying earlier that the ISO on my camera was too high. I don't know if it's looking better now. I turned it down a bit. I got some new softbox lighting for the studio here, so I didn't. I guess I had it turned up quite a bit. And then I wasn't going to wear a hat tonight, but then I noticed that my bald head was making it pretty bright in here, so that's why I put the hat on. Anyways, you're talking about doing something with me. Well, I hope it's something good. Gonna keep you up. Well, at least it's only 9:30 tonight, so we're not doing too bad tonight. Like I say, it doesn't matter to me. I don't have to go anywhere. It's I'm in the crosshairs. Oh dear. I don't know if I should be scared about that or what. Okay, well, what we'll do, like I say, what we'll do is cut this one off and then set something up for next Monday so we can. What shirt am I wearing? This is the Tragically Hip. It's a Canadian band from Kingston, Ontario. They're not or never were very big in the US. They're sort of a local, and they're not a local band, but they were pretty big in Canada. It's, I don't know how to describe their music, but say I might as well join you tonight, but it's not the night. Tragically, I'm hip. No, it's one way to look at it. It's it's one of my, well, not one of my favorite bands, but I've liked all their music. Unfortunately, their lead singer passed away a few years ago from brain cancer. So no new music. Well, I should say no new music from them. They had a bunch of, like, a full album that was unreleased that they just released a couple of months ago. So it was nice to get some new music from them. Yeah, they were. Tragically Hip was definitely all about Canada. And I'm not sure. Well, I'm sure they did tour in the States, but again, they weren't very, very popular south of the border. So maybe I'm just tragic. Well, I don't know about that, Robert. Okay, well, I am gonna get off here. It's Wade has been nice. Has to be nice to me if I join. Oh, Wade's always nice to everybody. He can play nice with pretty much anyone. I think last week was a bit of a, just one of those nights, I guess. Yep. Yeah, like I said, gonna get off here. We'll see you guys next Monday at 8:30, and we'll continue on our conversation then. So hopefully everyone enjoyed the conversation with Gormy. Again, check him out where you can find him. And then if you like these live streams and replays, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and we'll try and bring in more guests. I've got a few other people in mind that I'm going to try and bring on, mostly from Instagram, but a couple other people from YouTube. So we'll see who's next in a couple of weeks. So I will talk to you good people later. Bye-bye now.